This video is not medical advice. It is not legal advice, but it is psychonaut healing advice. I do not have a degree. I am not a doctor. I am not a lawyer. And I've done drugs for most of my life. However, I've always been able to still have meaningful conversations despite being a stoner and do productive work that helps motivate me. I was also prescribed Adderall for some time, which was fantastic. I wish I had it now with the kind of work I do. I'd be able to do it so much better in terms of science and philosophy of writing. Um, this video is aimed to demystify the high dose psychedelic experience. So, in the olden days of the internet, there was a website called Arrowwood.com, maybe .org, Arrowwood, and it was kind of the information gathering zone, probably not CIA affiliated at all. But information gathering zone for illegal drugs, um, including marijuana, LSD, mushrooms, stuff like that. So we're in 50s, 40s, 50s. I think LSD first came to prominence more like in the 20s. The set and setting guy. I forget. But this is not intended as medical anything yet. It's intended for like it can't be legally prescribed with the control scheduling how it currently is. Um, but like what people do off label or whatever, I see psychiatry and psychology as inherently bad and unethical practices. Um, there's no baseline metric for health, so there's no way to rationally and falsifiably determine a deviation from that health. A deviation is not measured scientifically. It is not measured medically. It is assessed and pointed out by opinion. And, you know, the drugs that affect our brain and our mood, um, really are, not much older than 100 years old. Only 100 years of like really good scientific research, good scientific research has gone into psychotropic medication. So antidepressants, antipsychotics, um, stimulants, uppers, downers, screamers, laughers, whatever you want to call them. It has about a less than a century's worth of research behind them. And the research in the fields of psychology and science overall can be uh, questioned in a lot of different respects. Um, can be questioned in a lot of different respects. Sorry, I got a alert on my phone, so I got temporarily distracted. I don't use a prompt or anything. I just kind of talk. Um, it's part of the problem of just going off the flies. I can lose my train of thought. But anyway, psychedelics. Um, oh yeah, problem with psychiatry and psychology is that like there's no health baselines to which by which deviations are measured. That's how medicine's done, right? So you have high blood pressure or low blood pressure because a healthy blood pressure is established. You could have like aggravated mood and depressed mood because a healthy baseline is established, but there's no healthy baseline established. And I don't think they even talk about it in terms they use aggravated mood in a different way than I do. But like, um, but there's no healthy baseline established. So it's not based on it's not the treatment is not targeted towards a healthy baseline, and the diagnostics are not made of a healthy baseline. And healthy baselines for mental health can be established. It's pretty easy to define what's a good way to feel and think and behave and what is not. That shouldn't be really medically disputed. But a lot of these sciences are really, really new, and the science goes really, really fast. Um, and there's just so much I think we have yet to learn. And if we go to the entheogenic approach, these are mind altering drugs that are found naturally in nature. Whereas with antidepressants and antipsychotics and stuff like that, they are not, they're trying to like modulate parts of the brain that like we barely understand. And I often question like how is this stuff been medically defined? I look at a lot of our institutions and I'm like, I bet this could be challenged. Like let me share my screen. I want to know how they know this. I want to know how, like, is this, how much of this is theory and how much of this has been scientifically verified? Because, like, psychology and psychiatry, like brain science, it's all very new and it's like minute details when you're talking about neural activity, which is so small. Like, I wonder, like, to be frank, I wonder how much is bullshit and I wonder how much is not bullshit. Um, but regardless of that, I want to know how they know this. This is pretty small stuff. So, I mean, brain dissection. But it feels like this stuff would be like in completely different forms. I don't know. It seems like it'd be really hard to image it with an alive brain, and then really hard to find it if the brain, like these small details in the neurons of a dead brain, I feel like it would start to lose form, start to decay, and stuff like that pretty quick. So it'd be pretty hard to like, I don't know. I was very curious how they there's a thing I saw with all these dopamine receptors and what they do, like let's do that. Too little dopamine leads to less movement. Isn't Parkinson's excess movement? I know it's like less muscle capacity, like weakness in the muscles, but isn't it also like increased uncontrollable movement? So that was weird to me. Um, beware the euphoria. But yeah, so these are the five dopamine receptors, and I don't know. I guess maybe in brains that stuff is like really preserved. You can just find it under a microscope. I don't know. It seems like it would lose. It'd be hard to find, but I don't know. How they can keep brain cells alive while we're studying them. That could be a thing. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a biologist. Um, but and it's been a minute since I've had these classes. Um, so I'm not well versed on what it does. But basically, what I have written out in my paper here. So, my hypothesis said that the psychedelic neuroplastic state includes a temporary modification of dopamine receptors, serotonin receptors, norepinephrine receptors, and other receptors that they start recepting additional types of neurotransmitters. This is due in part to a flood of neurotransmitters that enter the synapse of these respective receptors. So, what I mean by that is this area here is considered the synapse or the synaptic cleft. I should change that to synaptic cleft. That's certainly what I meant by. Oh, so these are zoomed in image uh, replications of neurons, so brain cells, um, types of brain cells that deal with neurotransmission. I don't remember the part of the brain that is. Um, and so you could think of like the postsynaptic and the presynaptic neuron is like floating like towards each other, and then like the space between them is where the neurotransmitters get released into. They grab onto the receptors. They get released from the receptors, find more receptors, and then they get reuptaked into the presynaptic neuron and enter another chemical process. So, um, there are many of these kinds of pairs of neurons with the presynaptic, postsynaptic cleft, and or presynaptic and the postsynaptic, whatever. And they're scattered throughout the brain and the body. And there's different ones for dopamine, there's different ones for serotonin, and there's different ones for norepinephrine, and there's different ones for all the neurotransmitters. They work like this. One one of the synaptic clefts, the pre or post, whatever, the pre creates it, releases it, it gets onto the receptors. When it hits these receptors, that's where it sends the brain signal that you get the feeling reward of dopamine. You do a line of coke, a lot of these hit a lot of receptors all at once. Um, a lot of them get released out of here and hit receptors. And when they get released, a lot can be flooded and then they can move into neighboring synaptic clefts. So that's my theory then. And so what happens is these get super released in the psychedelic state. They fill up all these dopamine receptors as they start flooding out of that synaptic cleft into the synaptic cleft of neighboring neurotransmitters. And those are getting excited, and many are flooding all at once. And so, like serotonin will get in here, or norepinephrine will get in here, or on the serotonin receptor side, dopamine will get in there and stuff like that, get onto these receptors. Or they might not even have to get onto these receptors, but they're in the synaptic cleft. But I would bet they get on the receptors. But like it happens chaotically. So it's like, you do a dose of mushrooms or acid or whatever, like the variations, as I was trying to explain here, is a little bit difficult. Um, the resulting patterns would be unique. Um, so like it would go into an ordering, like if there is multiple neurotransmitters being put onto the receptors, it would be like norepinephrine here, dopamine here, serotonin here. And then it scatters, they release them, and it comes up a different combination. That would be like unique and random and chaotic and not like according to some principles, what I would speculate. But it might be that certain receptors, depending on where they're placed on the synaptic cleft, or on the, what's that part called? The synaptic vessel. Um, Interesting. But yeah, so a lot is going on. I don't recall all of it, but generally, but that's my theory, is that they start producing these, it floods these, and then it just gets a big mess. But yeah, the it would end up like creating kind of like patterns and formations, but they would be unique. But they could form certain patterns based on like where they're at on this. So, um, so what I haven't put into writing quite yet is that I think the with some problems of mental illness, there might be problems in any parts of these neurons, right? Dysfunctions or problems or deformities. Um, but that the psychedelic state can heal any problems or deformities on these neurons. So that like with schizophrenia, it seems like no one advises giving people with psychosis, schizophrenia, psychedelic drugs, and I'm doing the opposite of that. So, but I think that they say it's just too much dopamine is happening. I don't think that's the case. I think that there are deformity, like there's deformities or there's something going on that can be like regulated naturally with psychedelics. So in terms of their behavior and because what I also don't like about the antipsychotic use is like they really try to like mitigate behavior instead of like enhance the experience of the person. And so like for me to fix the like distorted reality perception of someone in schizophrenia, you get them in a psychedelic state. They know they're tripping, they feel like they're tripping, they come down for that trip and they can integrate back into a sober state that is more accurate to base reality. So it's like because they can like enter a state and like come back to reality, they feel a sense of normalcy again. That's how I speculate it would work in schizophrenia on the like perceptive behavioral level. But then on the biological level, what I think is if there's problems with formations, yeah, they're genetic or, due to like chemicals in the water that we're drinking and who knows what effects that it has on our brain. But like any defects or deformities in these receptors or in any parts of these vesicles, um, might most easily be targeted and healed and cured through psychedelic therapy because it just causes so much production and so much flow, but in a way that's like healthy and not harmful for the brain. It causes neuroplasticity, so new neurons grow. And it could be in the case too for schizophrenia that when new neurons are formed in the state of neurogenesis or neuroplasticity, which is found in the psychedelic state, those new neurons are healthy and it can have them help them maintain a healthy state of reality. And so why entheogens and psychedelics work is that like it brings you to new levels of awareness, new types of thinking. It makes you open to ideas that maybe you struggle with or like haven't considered before. And studies has been proven effective for end of life as well as for addiction. And there's nothing scarier than facing end of life. And so if it's a proven effective psychological treatment for that, I think it can handle any kind of fear because there's no greater fear than that. It's a terminal fear, so it's not really thought about in that way. But if something can achieve peace with that kind of fear, it can help work through all fear. And I think that if you have those kind of deep fears going into the psychedelic state, that can actually be really healing. Um, I think that when using psychedelics to help heal mental illness, it's important to like grieve um, while on psychedelics. And it's very cathartic. It's not like grieving while sober. Like when you cry and you're really like grieving, the loss of someone or the loss of a part of yourself or like, just really grieving something. It feels like so rewarding to do it in a psychedelic state. People might be apprehensive of feeling those deep, scary emotions of grief in a psychedelic state. Fear and rejection are a lot worse in a psychedelic state. But grief and all those other emotions are so much better in the psychedelic state. When you're in the psychedelic state, you're very impressionable and you're very vulnerable, but you're also very open and you're very resilient in other kinds of ways. It opens you up to new ways of thinking. But it doesn't, it helps you challenge your own beliefs and feel comfortable, like really nurturing yourself and loving yourself for who you are and your authenticity and stuff like that. It's a really self-authentic and autonomy promoting kind of like experience. in terms of how it really helps kind of promote self-identity, and it helps promote like um a sense of like finding meaning and purpose in life. If it can do it at the end of life, it can do it for, the peak of life or whatever. Um, I don't think it's necessarily negative to do it around children. If it's your first time, maybe. I think people, if they can anticipate the psychedelic state pretty well, and people are parents, they have responsibilities. I would be interested in doing studies of like how if babies react differently to their parents while their parents are in a psychedelic state. I think that is an ethical study that I'd be interested in doing. So I wonder if babies act differently if their parents are in a psychedelic state. That's curious to me. So there's a lot of factors go into a baby's mood. Uh, so a little bit difficult to do tests on babies, but I think that'd be a fun one. Because it's just concerns because like your motor skills are a little bit less precise. So it's just like you don't want to like be not, like necessarily playing with your kid while on psychedelics because like you might like get muscle weakness and drop them or something like that. That's like kind of the biggest concern. So it's like make sure you're really stable and sturdy if you got to hold them while you're tripping. Baby wakes up while you're trying to medicate for the night. Just make yourself sturdy and just like understand that like you're not going to paint a Picasso while you're on psychedelics, and that translates into like poor motor skills. I also advise avoiding looking at your phone, having your phone on silent, or better yet, turned off and put away. People tend to have a real negative reaction to looking at social media and looking at things online. Our algorithms aren't necessarily programmed to make us healthy or to like what we see on our phone, but they're more trying to get us incentive to do things like buy stuff we don't need. Um, so yes, put the phone away. Uh, I would also advise having a designated driver. Ideally, a trip babysitter is what you want. A trip babysitter is someone who is a psychonaut. A psychonaut is someone who takes psychedelic drugs in order to expand their consciousness. Um, but it's someone who is comfortable with psychedelic drugs, who can be there to guide you. They can be on the drugs or not with you. Trip babysitters can trip too, but they're just like the experienced ones in the room with people who are maybe less experienced. So they can kind of guide the flow of energy because you do act a little weird. You do act a little childlike. You get that sense of childlike wonder and enjoyment, and it's a beautiful thing to kind of feed into and to enjoy. You find things a lot funnier. Things look so much prettier than they normally do. I wouldn't look in a mirror. Looking in the mirror can be a little freaky. Looking at your own skin is usually fine. Like the hallucinations are just like visual patterns. If stuff's already moving, like in trees and leaves, it might look like more dramatic, but it's all just kind of like stuff that's still in the patterns and aren't in them move. So you might like see the hairs and like see weird patterns in your skin, and that's not so freaky. But looking in a mirror can be kind of weird. So can looking on your phone. So I would avoid the phone and really just tune into your present moment, not in the digital world, your present moment IRL, for the psychedelic experience, just while you're tripping. Um, and, you know, talks about philosophy are fun, or gratitude, or hope and optimism and things like that. Avoiding difficult talks is a good idea. Bringing up a problem you had with them or something that's been bothering you, not a good idea. Um, because when you can't like you want to be able to reasonably predict people in the room when you're tripping, and so that can lead to like unpredictable behavior, which can be seen as like threatening to someone who's tripping. Um, you want kind of a predictable flow of things. So, like activity, like looking at like cool like galaxy lamps and like fiber optics. Stuff like that is really effective in terms of like focus and like having a good time while tripping. Stuff that glows in the dark, non-toxic paint, stuff like that. Especially those that are like black light sensitive or glow in the dark. Just be careful with black lights when they get hot. But music, some people are turned off by it, some people like it. Music without lyrics is usually good, or songs that you like can be good too. Some people might have emotional experiences with songs that they didn't have before and stuff like that. But it is to create kind of like a reality frame shift, a mindset frame shift. Like how you have a mindset frame shift when you want to go on a diet, right? Or when you want to quit smoking. You do your day differently. You start things differently. You have a frame shift of your mindset, right? We do it all the time. And they usually fail with stuff like diets and quitting smoking. Speaking of. But with psychedelics, these usually, and this is, there's been research on that psychedelics help with addiction. And but they give you that kind of mindset frame shift, but one that sticks. And it's for healthy behaviors, not necessarily diet. I don't think people should diet to lose weight, but I think they should eat what makes them feel good. So, eat is eat what makes your body feel good, what makes your body function at its peak is what I say. And that's different for everyone. Um, but keeping a good mindset through the psychedelic experience can take some direction and work. Um, some things are healthy to experience and to feel, and any psychedelic experience is going to be healthy. It's going to create that frame shift or that, yeah, a frame shift mindset for you in ways in your life, such as eating healthier and stuff like that. But like you'll want to do things that are more geared towards self-care, that are more geared towards pursuing stuff that's actually meaningful to you, geared towards not feeling so much like you have to put up with all these social expectations that are put on each and every one of us. So that's where that frame shift really happens. It really just, and that's why, they say the CIA or whatever didn't like them hippies doing the LSD, man. It has that mindset change. It does. But those systems are super entrenched and they're well established and they're hard to defeat individually. They have to be defeated collectively. So we can't change a system by ourselves, but we can change our experience within that system. And that's where at home psychedelic therapy is useful in terms of resisting broken systems and also healing your mental health, in my non-medically certified opinion. But it just gets you like motivated to like, do right by your health. You wake up ready to clean your house. I mean, the next day you have a little bit of a hangover, I'll be honest. You can be a little sensitive to like light and sound. It's kind of like migraine sensitivity about the migraine. Um, but then you start waking up and you're like motivated to do what you want to be doing. It sets you on a path of realizing what it is you want to be doing. And then it gives you that little boost of motivation to do what you want to be doing. So that's really the friendship that happens when it comes to like taking psychedelics and coming out the other side a new person. It's like when you face a big fear like skydiving or something like that, you come out the other side a new person. Um, this is like really just kind of a general motivator. It's not a motivator. It's not like you're going to wake up with that Adderall motivation. People know what I'm talking about, tall about. You're not going to wake up with that after psychedelics, but you will wake up with that like excited to start your day and like ready to get started on it. That's what you'll start waking up with. And that's something great to wake up with every day as much as you can. Um, so set and setting are famous words. Set is your mindset, is what I've been talking about. Always aiming for a goal of keeping it positive and then working on grief. Working on grief. Grief is the target emotion to feel. And then laughter. Laughter is actually an expression of anger. Funny enough, laughter is anger. It's an expression of angry feelings. It doesn't mean you feel threatened by it when you're laughing, especially in a psychedelic state. Don't want to feel threatened by it. But it is a release of anger. And it's a very healthy one. And it's very fun. And it's good to experience laughter, especially shared laughter with others. And especially taking psychedelics in group settings, you can really experience that shared laughter, which is really cool. And then setting just refers to like your environment. Make sure you don't have to drive, make sure you got food to eat and you don't got any responsibilities, stuff to do, keep your, keep yourself entertained. Um, and mindset is really about, going in there with like intentional stuff to work on and then just trying to have fun the rest of the time. And if you're new to psychedelics or apprehensive about psychedelics, like your first trip, you can just begin to just experience what it is to have fun. You don't have to like, set any intentional group to work on, but just introduce yourself to a fun psychedelic experience. And then the goal is at the time after that, to start assigning some grief work in there. And mourning your inner child, mourning the loss of someone else. This, the grief work, mourning the loss of opportunity. I mean, mourning loss from so many things. So that kind of grief work is important in the psychedelic state. It is most healing in the psychedelic state. And other than finding that, it's finding your inner child and playing with it, being that inner child, not finding a real inner child within you, but like being that inner child, seeing life through the eyes of a child, which is a psychedelic state. It's just like seeing the wonder and potential and the greatness of everything. One of my main theories of this kind of education and our systems and psychology and stuff like that is that unintended consequence, hopefully not intended, but I think unintended consequence is that we end up being smartest as children, and then through the education system and then the types of jobs we have in terms of what it does to us psychologically and intellectually and just our systems, they regress our intellect and they regress our intelligence, the way the systems are set up. And taking entheogens is a way to help fight that regression and a way to bring you to where you're supposed to be cognitively. We should all have maturity levels of not children, but we are children in a lot of like, we are innocent in ways, we want not to hurt others and we want to do good unto others and we want good things done unto us, and that's just not how the world works. But it's good to nurture that vulnerability and that heart and being optimistic about where that's leading you in life. And psychedelics really open up a pathway for that. Um, so yeah, that the grieving on the psychedelic state is the most therapeutic. And that's the kind of emotions that we pent the most up and we try to think about the least. And we end up thinking about it the most in subconscious or like conscious ways that aren't emotional. Um, those can come up, but like grief, anything fear-based can be powerful to encounter on psychedelics. Um, but it's always it, and some of the biggest fears you might encounter is like losing a sense of like a selfhood. Oh, I am a conscious being within my own body. Take yourself back to that. I think before I am Rene Descartes. Those are kind of like mantras and things you can think about to where if you have any like kind of deal realization or depersonalization that gets too freaky, those are ways you can mitigate that. Like, nope, I exist. And breathing, everything's fine. I people think that they're dying and they're not in pain. If you were dying, you would be in pain. Pretty much, most of the time. Heart attack's usually pretty painful. Nauseous for women, painful. But nausea happens psychedelics, but For the most part, if you're like dying of something terrible, you're feeling pain. And when people think they're dying, they're not in pain. So they don't have any indicators of like they're dying, but they believe that they are. Um, it might become like breath aware or like whatever, but that will phase with like distraction and stuff like that. But yeah, paranoia is like fears of death or like I don't know who I am, and it's like, oh, you're this ragtag person born in this year, having a night on this, July evening. You are a person, you are real. And stuff can be explored also conversationally as a way of mitigating that kind of fear. Um, and then fears that you're dying or something like that. People scared they're dying. No, you're not. You're just experiencing bodily sensations that feel physically different than what you're used to, and you are slightly paranoid. Um, but usually if you're scared, you're dying or something like that, the best thing to do, ironically, is just like lay down and just try, like, won't be able to sleep, but just try to lay down and relax and just focus on your breath. And you'll realize that what you think is like a panic alarm is just a weird sensation. But that's a way to do that. And I don't recommend taking like Xanax if you start having a bad trip. In my experience, it doesn't take away the thought patterns of the bad trip. It just takes away the fun body buzz part of the bad trip. So I wouldn't try that. Chocolate does have good effects uh, for reducing paranoia and also like kind of calming down the effects of the trip. Everyone swears by orange juice making a trip harder. Um, I don't think it's ever really done much for me. I don't remember, to be quite honest, my own experiences of drinking orange juice. So I know I've done it before. All psychedelics. Um, yeah, if people like lose consciousness unexpectedly, like I'm just trying to cover all bases for what might happen in case people take this advice. Uh, you don't want someone like if someone like lays down, tries to take a nap, or like lays down and like drifts off like to a slumber, that's fine. But someone who's talking and all of a sudden just like whatever, that could be a seizure, that could be something serious. So if they just like a middle conversation, just like pass out, that's not okay. If they're woozy, oh, I need to lay down for a minute, then pass out, that is okay. But if they're like 1 minute making sense and alert and everything, the next minute they're out without like, you know, long complaints of excessive drowsiness, that'd be a little bit concerning, or that could be a seizure. Um, Other than that, if people start having a bad trip, just remind them it'll be over in a few hours. Um, Try to focus. Let's try to think about something else or do something else. Um, Cover them with blankets, stuff like that, stuff to like make them feel personally secure and things like that. Would help as well. So, to all fellow people thinking about doing entheogens as a way to treat psychiatric illness, which I really think it can. I think doing it twice a week for 4 weeks and grieving, you know, for most of those experiences. Um, I mean, it can't change the sociological factors. We're still stuck in a terrible capitalism and unhealthy sociological patterns that are making us very mentally unwell. Um, but it's not our fault. And there's a lot we can do to resist, both in terms of enjoying our present moment more often, and psychedelics can help with that. Um, and doing things like understanding psychedelics as medicine and seeing psychiatry for the foolishness it is, um, and start taking ownership of your own mental health and doing something with it. So hope to inspire people to do it, but also do it safely. I created this guide for to try to give safe guidelines for doing it. So thank you so much for tuning in and watching my video. I hope you got something out of it. And I'll probably record more about the psychedelic experience. So thank you so much.